The first time I realized that being Victoria Hamilton's daughter was a trap disguised as privilege, I was 8, and I was crying over a broken music box in my oversized bedroom. My father, CEO of Hamilton Industries and the embodiment of control, walked in, polished shoes clicking against marble, and adjusted his Armani tie as though it were a shield protecting him from any sign of weakness. "Charlotte, darling," he said, that tone that combined sweetness and steel, "a Hamilton never accepts mediocrity." And just like that, my tearful sobs were nothing more than a minor inconvenience in the grand design of my life. Every moment of my childhood had been curated with military precision, from piano lessons to debate club, from the schools I would attend to the social events I would grace, all mapped years before I could even spell ambition. Our Beverly Hills mansion was a monument to wealth and order, 28 rooms, each more opulent than the last, glinting chandeliers and polished marble floors, yet to me, it wasn't home, it was a gilded cage that smothered every spark of individuality. By the time I reached 25, I had executed my father's blueprint flawlessly. Harvard Business School graduate, rising star as a junior executive at Hamilton Industries, and engaged to Bradley Winchester III, the meticulously chosen heir to Winchester Technologies and my father's ideal husband for life. Every milestone of my life ticked along like clockwork, but beneath that perfect exterior, a storm brewed. I was madly, irreversibly, completely in love with someone who wasn't Bradley. Someone the world would never have expected. It began on a rainy Tuesday when my sleek Ferrari, that symbol of inherited perfection, decided to betray me. I was already late for an important meeting, rain soaking my designer suit, when he arrived. James Mitchell, in a battered tow truck, smiling beneath a hood that had seen better days, greeted me like a hero from a storybook I'd never dared to write. "Looks like your timing belt's shot," he said, hands wiping on worn jeans, casual yet sure. "I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours." There was an honesty in his brown eyes, an absence of pretense, and something in the way he spoke, clear and grounded, made me abandon my call to a premium roadside service. I chose to wait at his small garage and unknowingly, I chose to step into the life I had always secretly craved. Coffee machine hums, fluorescent lights flickering above us, and the smell of motor oil mixed with strong black coffee. James spoke of his life, of engineering school struggles, of nights spent hands-on in mechanics while his classmates chased cushy corporate salaries. "Life's too short to do something just because it looks good on paper," he said, eyes alight with the kind of passion my world had never taught me to recognize. His words weren't just philosophy, they were a revelation. For the first time, someone articulated the thoughts I had buried beneath layers of expectation. One coffee turned into another, another into dinner, and then countless stolen hours where the walls of my golden cage faded, leaving only him and the freedom I had never known. 6 months of living 2 lives ensued. By day, I was Charlotte Hamilton, heiress, executive, fiancée. By night, I was just Charlotte, laughing on midnight drives, stealing kisses in hidden parks, tasting joy in simple, unscripted moments. James never asked about my wealth, never sought to impress me with restaurants or gifts. He showed me that love could be uncomplicated, life could be spontaneous, and happiness didn't require a ledger or a legacy. Yet every stolen moment, every quiet confession, came with the looming awareness that reality could not bend forever. The inevitable breaking point arrived at a gala held in our own mansion, a display of extravagance that epitomized everything I was fighting against. Bradley spoke incessantly about mergers and profits to anyone who would endure, while my mother paraded me around like an exhibit of perfect breeding. "Charlotte will be taking over the East Coast operations after the wedding," she announced, eyes gleaming with social triumph. I felt suffocated, as though the chandeliers above were chains pressing down on my chest. Excusing myself, I fled to the garden, the smell of roses brushing against my damp dress, my trembling fingers already dialing James. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered into the phone, tears streaking down my face. "I can't marry Bradley. I can't be who they want me to be." Silence, then James's calm, unwavering reply, "Then don't be. Be who you are, Charlotte. That's the person I fell in love with." That night changed the trajectory of everything. The next morning, my resolve crystallized as I walked into my father's study, heart pounding yet anchored by certainty. "Daddy, I need to tell you something," I began, voice trembling but firm. "I can't marry Bradley. I'm in love with someone else." The reaction was volcanic. His face reddened, a fist slammed against mahogany, and his voice thundered accusations and disbelief. "A mechanic," he bellowed. "My daughter, a Hamilton, in love with a grease monkey?" I stood my ground. "He's an engineer, Daddy, brilliant. You just need to meet him." His fury escalated, threats about trust funds and company positions spilling like lava. I met it with calm. Crystal clear. "Daddy, goodbye." Walking away was the hardest act of defiance I had ever committed, each step punctuated by my mother's sobs, my father's roars, and the whispers of the staff. Outside, James waited, concern etched into his face. I explained everything, expecting resistance, and received it in waves. "Charlotte, that's your life you're giving up. Your family, your inheritance. I can't let you do that for me," he said. I kissed him, silencing his protests. "I'm not giving up my life, James. I'm finally starting it." And with that, the life we had only glimpsed in stolen hours became our reality. The first weeks were a baptism into true independence. My transition from a life of luxury to an apartment, a modest income, and financial self-reliance was humbling. Each obstacle, frozen accounts, revoked credit cards, attempts to sabotage my employment only tightened the bond between us. We discovered the sweetness of struggle, the intimacy of creating our own life outside inherited privilege. Together, we faced the world, determined to carve a path defined not by wealth or expectation, but by love and purpose. The first days in our new life together were a revelation, a blend of exhilaration, fear, and the intoxicating thrill of absolute freedom. Walking out of the Hamilton mansion had been the hardest, most gut-wrenching decision of my life, but stepping into James' modest one-bedroom apartment felt like stepping into my own skin for the first time. Gone were the ornate chandeliers, marble floors, and endless corridors. Instead, we had a small living space filled with imperfections that somehow made it feel real, authentic, ours. The smell of oil and motor grease still clung faintly to James' clothes, and the walls were slightly scuffed from years of modest living, but the warmth radiating from him and the simplicity of our surroundings created a cocoon of safety and intimacy I had never known in all my years of privilege. For the first time, life wasn't dictated by a schedule imposed by someone else's definition of success. We had no nannies, no staff, no assistants to manage our lives. Everything, from cooking meals to folding laundry, from paying bills to grocery shopping, was ours to handle. I had gone from a world of indulgence to a reality where a single lost sock could feel catastrophic, yet every small victory, every meal we cooked together, every budget we balanced, became a celebration of our autonomy. It was humbling, grounding, and addictively empowering all at once. James' world was equally revealing. Working at his garage, I watched him manipulate machinery with hands both skilled and gentle, a balance that left me in awe. He taught me to handle tools, to understand the mechanics behind engines, to see beauty in the way things worked. Every greasy bolt, every engine adjustment, became a metaphor for life itself, a life that required patience, persistence, and love for the process rather than a fixation on the outcome. He had deliberately chosen this life, despite being brilliant enough to dominate corporate engineering boards or lead a major tech company. I could have taken a cushy corporate job, a corner office, a high salary, he said one evening as we sat on the cracked leather couch, eating instant noodles with chopsticks we had learned to use from a YouTube tutorial. But this is where I belong. Hands-on, solving real problems, building something that matters. His conviction left me in awe. I realized that true fulfillment didn't come from titles, bank accounts, or social validation, but from creating, contributing, and living authentically. Our first job hunt was a crash course in reality. I had gone from a world where opportunities were handed on a silver platter to one where every resume, every interview, every networking email had to be earned through genuine effort. I applied to entry-level positions, focusing on consulting and small firms that offered room to learn rather than prestige. Each rejection was a blow to my ego, but James' presence softened the sting. "Every challenge is just another way to measure your resilience," he would say, and I believed him. Slowly, I started to rebuild myself not as Victoria Hamilton's daughter, but as Charlotte, capable, determined, and free. Each morning, I commuted through the bustling city streets in a second-hand car we had bought together, waving at neighbors who had no idea who I was, sipping lukewarm coffee on the way to work, and feeling the rush of life unfiltered by wealth or expectation. The financial adjustments were also eye-opening. Gone were the unlimited credit cards and extravagant allowances. I learned to budget, to prioritize, to understand the true value of money. James taught me how to track expenses, find deals, and save without sacrificing enjoyment. At first, I resisted the simplicity. Harvard had never prepared me for the emotional weight of rationing groceries or balancing utility bills, but soon, the satisfaction of financial autonomy replaced the anxiety of dependency. We laughed over our frugal mistakes, celebrated minor victories like cooking an edible pasta from scratch, and slowly, our tiny apartment became a sanctuary of independence. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real, and in that reality, I found freedom that the Hamilton mansion could never offer. Yet freedom did not come without consequences. My parents' interference didn't end with my departure. Their attempts to control me, manipulate me, and frighten me into submission escalated in unexpected ways. Frozen bank accounts, revoked credit cards, and attempts to sabotage my new job became a constant test of resilience. Each call from the Hamilton legal team felt like a dagger, each email from a high-powered attorney another challenge to my resolve. But with James by my side, their threats felt powerless. He was a fortress of logic, patience, and unwavering support. "They can't control who you are," he said one evening, wrench in hand, wiping his hands on an oil-stained rag. "They can threaten, intimidate, manipulate, but they can't dictate your heart." And in that small garage, surrounded by tools, engines, and the smell of motor oil, I realized that true courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. Love, too, revealed itself in its purest form. James never demanded grandeur or obligation, he simply loved, and allowed himself to be loved in return. We shared midnight drives along the coast, barefoot picnics in quiet parks, and evenings spent talking about dreams, ambitions, and failures. We were two people stripped of pretense, discovering joy in ordinary moments. There was laughter, messy, unrestrained laughter, and intimacy that had nothing to do with wealth or privilege. Over time, I realized that my past life had conditioned me to equate luxury with happiness, but James' world showed me that fulfillment stemmed from connection, authenticity, and the shared adventure of building life together. By the third month, we began planning our wedding, not the ostentatious spectacle my parents had envisioned, but a simple celebration in a local park, with a handful of friends and the promise of a life forged by love rather than obligation. Invitations were handmade, flowers were wild-picked, and our dress and suit were simple yet beautiful. It was everything I had wanted, yet it terrified me. The absence of grandeur felt like a betrayal to my upbringing, yet in every moment, I felt more aligned with myself than I ever had in the Hamilton mansion. It was a test of courage, authenticity, and love, the ultimate declaration that we had chosen each other over privilege, status, and expectation. Even amidst happiness, echoes of the past lingered. My parents' whispers, Bradley's empty promises, and the social pressures of the world we had left behind constantly threatened to intrude. One evening, my mother sent a desperate text, offering one last chance to reconcile with Bradley and reclaim a life of comfort. My father issued threats veiled as concern, warning me of poverty and ruin. But as I watched James, laughing freely with our friends, I knew that wealth could never compare to the freedom, love, and fulfillment we had carved out together. That night, as we held hands under the stars, I realized that love wasn't about safety or convenience, it was about choosing someone who made your heart lighter, your laughter louder, and your life fuller. In these early months, we built a foundation not just for our marriage, but for our lives. Each challenge, from financial instability to parental interference, from navigating a new career to adapting to modest living, strengthened our bond. James' commitment and resilience inspired me to grow, not just survive. I learned to cook, budget, negotiate, and face the world on my own terms. And slowly, imperceptibly, we transformed our modest apartment into a home, a place where authenticity thrived, where laughter rang, and where love, unshackled by expectation, flourished. In the end, it was a lesson in priorities. I had left behind vast wealth, societal prestige, and familial approval, But in their place, I gained something infinitely more valuable: the freedom to be myself, the courage to follow my heart, and a love that transcended all superficial measures of success. With James by my side, I was no longer Victoria Hamilton's daughter living a life scripted by others. I was Charlotte, living fully, loving deeply, and forging a future that was mine and mine alone. And as we sat in our small apartment, sharing a late-night coffee after a day spent working, laughing, and building our lives, I realized that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, accolades, or appearances. It's measured in freedom, love, and the courage to live your truth. The morning of our wedding dawned with a quiet, surreal magic. I woke in our modest apartment, the faint sunlight spilling across the kitchen table where James had already brewed coffee, the aroma filling our small but comforting space. There was no anticipation of paparazzi flashes, no frantic makeup artists or stylists hovering with judgmental gazes, just the calm, steady presence of the man I had chosen above all else. I slipped into a simple white dress I had found in a department store, a delicate fabric that fell perfectly without the need for designers or alterations, and as I stood in front of the cracked mirror, brushing back my hair, I felt an unfamiliar sensation: peace. For the first time in my life, the life I was living was entirely my own, and every choice, every step, had been made with love and intention rather than obligation. James appeared beside me, dressed in a rented suit that fit him remarkably well. He looked at me as he always did, with those honest, unwavering eyes that had been my anchor through so many storms. "You look incredible," he whispered, pulling me into a warm embrace that somehow erased every lingering trace of doubt. We didn't need a grand hall or 1,000 witnesses to validate our commitment. The authenticity of this moment was its own perfection. Outside, a small group of our closest friends gathered in the park, helping to arrange the simple wooden chairs, hanging wildflowers, and lighting lanterns that cast a gentle glow as evening approached. This was our sanctuary, stripped of pretense, where laughter and love would define the day rather than wealth or status. Yet, as perfect as it seemed, the past refused to stay buried. My phone buzzed unexpectedly. A text from my mother: "Your father and I will be attending. One last chance to fix this mistake." My heart skipped a beat, but I quickly glanced at James, who was adjusting a lantern, and saw the gentle reassurance in his eyes. "It's your choice," he said softly, squeezing my hand. I realized then that while the ghosts of my past might linger, they could not dictate the present. I wanted my parents there. Despite everything, they were still my family. But I also knew that their presence would be conditional, a test of our strength and resolve. I took a deep breath and responded with a simple, "We'll see you there." Walking down the makeshift aisle, I felt every emotion I had ever experienced as Victoria Hamilton's daughter: anxiety, fear, and the crushing weight of expectation, but they were quickly replaced by clarity and purpose. James stood at the end, hands slightly trembling, and when our eyes met, it felt as if the world had narrowed to only the two of us. I saw my parents at the back, my father's face taut with disapproval, my mother dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. Neither made a move to join the ceremony, standing rigidly in the shadows as though they were spectators in a world they could no longer control. For the first time, I realized that love and family were not synonymous. One could exist without the other, and true happiness often required redefining these boundaries. The ceremony was intimate, filled with quiet laughter, heartfelt vows, and moments that felt suspended in time. We didn't exchange extravagant rings or hire a choir. Our promises were personal, raw, and utterly sincere. James held my hands in his, and I felt the power of our shared history, the moments of fear, rebellion, discovery, and unwavering commitment converging in a single, radiant present. When we said "I do," it wasn't just a declaration of love, it was a declaration of freedom, a bold affirmation that we would define our lives on our own terms, no longer shackled by the expectations of our families or society. Afterward, the casual reception unfolded like a dream. A simple barbecue in the park, laughter mingling with the scent of grilled food, friends swapping stories, and the gentle warmth of the evening sun. My parents attempted one last intervention, my mother's voice trembling with desperation. "Charlotte, darling, it's not too late. Bradley would still take you back. Think about what you're throwing away." My father, ever the strategist, cut directly to the point. "Stay with this person, and you'll never see a penny of your inheritance. Is that what you want? To live in poverty? Their words, meant to wound and manipulate, only reinforced my certainty. I looked at James, laughing freely with our friends, completely at ease in his rented suit. And then I looked at my parents, rigid and trapped in their world of wealth and rigid expectation. The choice had become clearer than ever: comfort or authenticity, wealth or love. I spoke with deliberate calm, my voice carrying the authority I had always been denied in my family. What I want, I said clearly, is to be happy. James makes me happy. If you can't understand that, then maybe we don't need your money or your approval in our lives. My father's face contorted in anger, the familiar shade of purple I had come to know so well. You are a Hamilton, he spat, his voice sharp as he turned on his heel. My mother hesitated, torn between loyalty to her husband and the undeniable truth of our happiness, before following him in hurried, uncertain steps. As the park fell silent around us, James wrapped his arm around my waist. You okay? He asked, his voice gentle and unwavering. I leaned into him, watching the past walk away with my parents. Never better, I whispered. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a rhythm that was both exhilarating and grounding. We began to claim our independence fully, not just in love but in lifestyle. James continued his work at the garage, refining his innovations and teaching young mechanics skills that empowered them to create opportunities for themselves. I threw myself into my consulting career, building my client base from scratch, navigating budgets, deadlines, and business challenges that, while modest compared to Hamilton Industries, felt profoundly mine. Every small success, every solved problem, every late-night conversation about the day's triumphs and failures, reinforced the life we had chosen together. Our parents, though physically absent from our lives, became a distant hum of tension and occasional interference. My mother still hinted, subtly, at the practicalities of wealth and legacy, while my father's grudging respect for James began to manifest in cautious conversations about business. Slowly, boundaries were established, and for the first time, I felt that our lives were our own, unmediated by the expectations or judgment of others. We had built a foundation not of opulence or inheritance but of trust, resilience, and love, and every moment reinforced the value of choosing authenticity over appearance, freedom over convention. By the time summer arrived, we had transformed our small apartment into a home in every sense of the word. The walls, once bare, were lined with books, photographs, and small mementos from our adventures. The kitchen became a laboratory for culinary experiments and laughter. The living room hosted evenings of storytelling, planning, and dreams, each one shaping the path of our shared future. And while the outside world, our former social circles, our families, and the expectations of society remained a distant echo, within these walls, we were free. We had reclaimed our narrative, redefined success, and proven that love, when chosen deliberately and courageously, could outshine any inheritance or societal expectation. And yet, even in our happiness, life had subtle reminders that change was never truly complete. Each day brought lessons in humility, patience, and collaboration. Every minor obstacle, from financial tight spots to misunderstandings about roles and responsibilities, became an opportunity to strengthen our bond and refine our shared vision for the future. In the quiet moments, as we sat together watching the city lights flicker through our modest window, I realized that happiness wasn't a destination dictated by wealth or status, it was cultivated daily through choices, sacrifice, and unwavering partnership. James and I had not just survived the storm of our pasts, we had created a life that celebrated the very essence of who we were. And so, as the first month of our married life came to a close, I understood that the journey we had embarked upon was far from ordinary. It was a life forged from courage, built on love, and sustained by the deliberate choices we made each day. In the end, leaving behind the Hamilton mansion, our family's expectations, and the allure of inherited wealth had not been a sacrifice, it had been liberation. With James beside me, I felt unshackled, alive, and finally in possession of the life I had always longed for, a life defined not by the world's metrics but by the depth of our love and the authenticity of our choices. Life after the wedding settled into a comforting rhythm, the simplicity of our days a welcome contrast to the suffocating opulence of my past. James and I reveled in the freedom to live authentically, laughing over burnt dinners, celebrating small wins at work, and taking long drives along the coast with no one to judge or control us. Yet, even amidst this newfound happiness, a subtle tension began to creep in. James had been increasingly distracted, disappearing late at night, taking mysterious phone calls, and spending hours at the garage under the dim glow of flickering fluorescent lights. At first, I told myself it was normal. He was ambitious, committed, and passionate about his work, but a persistent knot of unease grew in my stomach. One Friday evening, I decided to surprise him with dinner from our favorite Thai place. The apartment was unusually quiet when I arrived. His worn jeans and grease-stained t-shirt were nowhere in sight, the apartment eerily empty. A hastily scribbled note lay on the counter, "Working late at the garage. Love you." Normally, I would have shrugged it off. James often worked late. But something felt off. There was a tension in the air I couldn't ignore, a whisper of a storm I hadn't yet seen. My mind raced through every possible scenario. Had something gone wrong with his latest project? Was he hurt? My concern quickly escalated to panic, and I decided to bring dinner to him. Driving through the city, I noticed the streets darkening, the once familiar route to his garage now shadowed in an ominous glow. When I arrived, the garage was silent and deserted. James' beat-up tow truck, which usually sat loyally parked out front, was nowhere to be seen. My fingers trembled as I dialed his number, only to be met with voicemail. Just as fear threatened to consume me, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Mitchell, please come to 1875, Highland Avenue immediately. It's about your husband." My heart stopped. Highland Avenue was deep in the industrial district, miles from his garage. A cold dread settled over me as I punched the address into my GPS, driving through the darkened streets, imagining every worst-case scenario imaginable. The GPS guided me to a massive, modern building, all sleek glass walls and minimalist design. Security gates opened automatically, and a uniformed guard directed me to an underground parking garage. My pulse raced with each step, uncertainty and anticipation intertwining. When the executive elevator doors opened on the top floor, I stepped into a stunning office suite with floor-to-ceiling windows, panoramic views of the city stretched out before me, and my eyes immediately locked on James. But he was not the man I had known. Gone were the oil-stained t-shirt and worn jeans. Instead, he wore an impeccably tailored suit, the kind of attire that radiated authority and influence. His warm smile, the one that had melted every fear I had, now held a hint of nervousness. "Charlie," he said softly, using his special nickname for me, "I think it's time I told you everything." Before he could continue, the office door burst open, and my past collided violently with my present. My father, mother, and Bradley Winchester III stormed in, faces etched with shock, confusion, and outrage. "What is the meaning of this?" my father thundered, his voice booming and already tinged with that familiar purplish rage. Security said Charlotte was headed up here. "What are you doing in the CEO's office?" You mechanic." James straightened his tie, standing tall and composed, and spoke with a calm authority that belied the tension in the room. "Actually, Mr. Hamilton, I am the CEO. James Mitchell, founder and chief executive officer of Mitchell Innovations." The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum that swallowed the room whole. My mother grabbed a chair for support, Bradley's mouth hung open in disbelief, and my father, for once, was rendered speechless. The air was thick with astonishment, the kind that comes only when the foundations of perception crumble entirely. James continued, taking my hand with a steadying grace. "I own a chain of auto repair shops. Yes, that was my first business, started with a loan from my college professor. But Mitchell Innovations is my main focus. We're a tech company, specializing in revolutionary electric vehicle batteries. That's what all those late nights in the garage were about. We were finalizing our new prototype." I felt my head spin. The man I had known as a humble, hands-on mechanic, the man I had fallen in love with for his honesty, kindness, and brilliance, was also a visionary entrepreneur who had been quietly building a multi-billion-dollar empire. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, awe and confusion mingling. His eyes softened as he explained, "Because I needed to know. I needed to know that you loved me for who I was, not my wealth or status. Every woman I dated before was only interested in my money or my position. You fell in love with me when I was just James, the mechanic. You chose me for me. I had to be certain. My father's sharp, calculating mind slowly caught up. Mitchell Innovations, he muttered, recognition dawning. The company that just revolutionized electric vehicle battery technology, the one every major manufacturer is vying to partner with. That's you? James nodded. Our market valuation reached $12 billion last week. Not quite Hamilton Industries territory yet, but we're getting there. I couldn't help but laugh softly, watching the very people who had once held my life hostage, my father, my mother, and Bradley, standing frozen in disbelief as the man they had underestimated revealed himself to be a titan in his own right. James' voice sharpened as he continued, and now, I'd like to discuss how you treated your daughter, the woman who is also now one of the largest shareholders in Mitchell Innovations, by the way, thanks to our marriage. The room went still. My mother clutched Bradley's arm, my father's face paled as he realized the magnitude of what he had dismissed. Hamilton Industries has been trying to enter the electric vehicle market for years. Having a connection to Mitchell Innovations would have been a game-changer, James said quietly, almost sympathetically. My father tried to regain control, stammering, "We were only looking out for Charlotte's best interest." James' reply was firm, measured, yet edged with steel. By trying to undermine her, trying to control her life, you only delayed what was inevitable. Charlotte didn't just settle for second best, she married the most brilliant, kind, and successful man she's ever known, without even knowing it. My mother stepped forward, arms extended, her voice a mix of guilt and longing. "Charlotte, sweetheart, we were wrong. Please, come home. Let us be part of your life." I glanced around the room, at the sleek office, the city sprawling beyond the windows, and then at James, my anchor through the chaos, my partner, my home. "I am home," I said softly, resolutely. "But if you want to be part of our lives, you'll have to accept us as we are. No more manipulation, no more control." My father's face tightened, his discomfort palpable as he struggled to process a daughter who had outgrown his authority and a son-in-law who had silently surpassed his own empire. The discussion then turned to business. James explained that Mitchell Innovations had received multiple offers from competitors for exclusive partnerships, but he had considered giving Hamilton Industries a chance, leveraging the family connection, but only as equals, with mutual respect, not dominance. My father, slowly adjusting to the revelation, realized that the company he had dismissed, the man he had underestimated, had quietly grown into a force that could not be ignored. Bradley slunk away, defeated and humiliated, while my parents slowly began to reconcile their pride with reality. That night, as we left the office, James and I walked hand in hand, feeling the weight of victory, truth, and love intertwined. The man I had loved for his soul had also proven to be a genius, and our life together had become richer than any trust fund or inheritance could ever provide. The days after the revelation in James' office were unlike anything I had ever experienced. The weight of my past life, the suffocating expectations, the relentless pressure to conform, the endless parade of wealth that had once defined my existence seemed to lift with every step I took alongside James. Our modest apartment, once a symbol of simplicity, now felt like a sanctuary, a place where love, laughter, and genuine connection mattered more than gold-plated halls or designer gowns. For the first time in my life, I could breathe without measuring each inhalation against someone else's approval, without calculating whether my actions aligned with some predetermined blueprint. We were finally free, not just from my father's control, but from the entire world of appearances that had tried to dictate who I should be. James, despite his incredible intelligence and the massive empire he had quietly built, remained the man I had fallen in love with. He still worked at his garage, guiding young apprentices, teaching mechanical skills to underprivileged youth, and instilling in them the same passion and integrity that had always defined him. But now, alongside that work, he was leading Mitchell Innovations to heights I hadn't even imagined. The contrast of his two worlds, humble, hands-on work in the garage and groundbreaking technological innovation in his company, never ceased to amaze me. He had found a way to remain grounded, to stay true to his roots, while simultaneously achieving greatness. And I, by his side, was learning every day what it meant to build something real, something meaningful, not just for ourselves but for others as well. I dove into my work with equal fervor. I became head of Mitchell Innovations Charitable Foundation, focusing on initiatives that supported young entrepreneurs and aspiring engineers who lacked the resources to pursue their dreams. Each project, each success, filled me with a sense of purpose I had never known in the gilded halls of my childhood. I began to understand fully what James had meant when he said life was too short to live on paper. Real life, authentic life, was messy, unpredictable, and breathtakingly beautiful. And through every late night of planning, fundraising, and mentoring, James was right there beside me, our partnership seamless, our connection unwavering. Our relationship deepened, strengthened not by wealth or social status, but by trust, respect, and shared values. We laughed until our sides ached, held each other through doubts and fears, and celebrated victories both big and small. Even grocery shopping became an adventure, a reminder that joy could be found in the simplest of moments. We cooked meals together, learning each other's favorite flavors and guilty pleasures, and reveled in the quiet intimacy of evenings spent on our tiny balcony overlooking the city. Those small details, once invisible to me amid the grandeur of my previous life, became the threads that wove our happiness together. Eventually, my parents began to reconcile with the reality of our choices. Mom, ever the emotional force, would visit, bringing snacks and awkwardly attempting to engage in our lives without slipping into manipulation. Dad, initially stiff and reluctant, began to show glimpses of genuine admiration for James, especially as he observed the company thriving under his leadership. Our interactions were far from perfect, but there was progress. Conversations that once revolved around control and expectations slowly shifted to discussions about collaboration, innovation, and even philosophical debates that spanned everything from classic cars to modern engineering marvels. My parents were learning, perhaps belatedly, that happiness and success were not defined solely by wealth or titles, but by the values one lived by and the integrity one maintained. Despite our financial stability, we continued to live modestly, grounded by the reality of the world we had chosen. We didn't need mansions, private jets, or opulent vacations to affirm our success. Our joy came from shared experiences, mutual support, and the deep knowledge that we had each chosen the other freely, without coercion or expectation. The world had once seemed a vast, suffocating cage of obligations, but now it was an open landscape of possibility. And with each passing day, I felt a sense of fulfillment so profound that even the memory of my old life's constraints seemed almost surreal. Of course, challenges still arose. Running a tech company while maintaining a charitable foundation was exhausting, and there were moments when the pressure of responsibilities threatened to overshadow our personal lives. But unlike the old days, these struggles were ours to face together, not imposed by the rigid dictates of others. We learned to balance work with play, ambition with love, and responsibility with freedom. The lessons of my past, once a source of stress and limitation, now informed our choices, reminding me of the resilience, courage, and determination required to carve out a life on one's own terms. In the evenings, James would sometimes take me back to our old apartment or to the little takeout place where we had shared countless meals during our early days. He would look at me with that same warm, mischievous smile, and in those moments, it didn't matter that he was now a billionaire, a tech visionary, or a powerhouse entrepreneur. He was still the man I had loved when he was just a mechanic, and I was still the woman who had defied expectation and chosen love over legacy. Those memories, small and ordinary as they were, became the foundation upon which we built the rest of our lives, a constant reminder that happiness often hides in simplicity, honesty, and human connection. Looking back, I realized that our journey was never about wealth, social status, or parental approval. It was about finding courage, following the heart, and embracing authenticity in the face of overwhelming expectation. James and I had not only discovered each other, but we had discovered ourselves, our strengths, our passions, and the limitless potential of a life lived freely. We had proven that love, integrity, and determination could build a life richer than any inheritance, more fulfilling than any title, and more enduring than any fortune. Our story became one of inspiration, not for the wealth we accumulated, but for the values we upheld, the risks we took, and the love that sustained us. It was a reminder that even when life seems dictated by others, when every path appears preordained, there is always the possibility of choosing differently. That possibility can lead to freedom, to joy, and to a life that, while imperfect, is authentically yours. James and I had found that life, and we cherished it with every fiber of our being. And so, we moved forward, hand in hand, building an empire, nurturing a foundation of giving, and living a life that honored the choices we had made and the love that had brought us together. No more silver spoons, no more trust funds dictating our happiness, no more cages of expectation. Just us, our shared dreams, and a life of endless possibility. Every now and then, as we sat on our balcony, watching the sunset over the city, James would squeeze my hand and whisper, "We did it, Charlie. We made it ours." And I would smile, knowing that the life we had chosen, the imperfect, exhilarating, authentic life, was the most extraordinary fortune of all. Because in the end, love isn't about money or empires. It's about choosing each other when everything else is stripped away. And in that truth, we had found everything we could ever want, a life together, built on trust, passion, and the courage to follow our hearts. Charlotte and James, the runaway heiress and the mechanic-turned-billionaire, had not only found each other, but had discovered a love that was more valuable than any inheritance, more enduring than any legacy, and infinitely more fulfilling than anything we could have imagined.